Sue Storm and Doctor Doom. We're gonna start off with one you may be more familiar with, and that's Doom using his God Emperor powers to create a patchwork world of the colliding multiverse. This world was called Battle World, and in this world he met a version of Sue who fell in love with him and started a family with him. They had 2 children who they named Franklin and Valeria. So basically he was like, "F you Reed, I've got your life. How's it feel?" And Reed was like, "Feels bad, man. I'm gonna grow a beard." Now this hasn't been the only time Doom and Sue have been together. On Earth 99315, these two were married, and Doom was a hero, and Sue was Baroness Von Doom. Though some fans speculate this Doom was actually Reed. There was an upswing in people considering these two after Doom was able to be the method by which Sue Storm's miscarriage was retconned into the birth of a healthy little girl, who Doom then named. That's why their daughter is named Valeria, and Doom is her godfather. Fun fact. She even left them to live with him for a while. Number 9. She-Hulk and Juggernaut. This happened during Chuck Austin's run on the Uncanny X-Men, a run that is disliked by many fans, and in it we had one of those reformed Juggernaut sightings. So Jen becomes attracted to him, and the two hooked up, and destroyed a hotel room because they're both big and muscular and it's funny. This also happened when she was his defense lawyer. Ethics, what are those? Other writers would not be down for this and relegate it to an alternate universe Jen, because main verse Jen would never. I don't know if we can say that. I mean, Star Fox? Is Star Fox worse or better than Juggernaut? I don't know. What's the metric? Dan Slott would be the one to be like, "It's okay guys, false alarm, nothing to see here." But there would still be a gross line of Wolverine telling Jen after she hit on him that he doesn't want Juggernaut's sloppy seconds. Ew. Also, but you'll take Sabretooth's? Where's the line, Logan? I mean, James. Number 8. Nightwing and Mirage. Nightwing over time has developed a reputation for being a hunk in the DC universe. All the people adore him. Him, Dick, not Rick. So during the New Teen Titans run from the 80s, the villain Mirage took a liking to him, but knew she didn't have a shot. Not only does Dick not have a savior complex villain fetish like Batman, but he was dating, nay going to marry Starfire at the time. So what did she do? She tricked him into being with her by turning into Starfire. He had no idea, and then when he found out that he'd been assaulted, the rest of the team called him a slut. Teen Titans go. Mirage was there at first to kill Donna Troy, to stop her son in the future. She was supposed to seduce Dick as part of the mission, but she really enjoyed it. She gave him a mullet and that Deathwing costume. Oh, Deathwing, what a time. Number 7. Iron Man and Madame Mask. Now comics love to give heroes a villain to tempt them if they can, to increase the drama. In Tony Stark's case for a while, that was Madame Mask. It wasn't uncommon in early Iron Man for the ladies Tony loved to either be secret or blatant villains. So Madame Mask, Whitney Frost, yes she has another name but I don't feel like butchering it. These two would come to know both of each other's identities and start a romantic relationship. Madame Mask was moved by the concern Tony showed over her face. She's down for people who don't care about her scars. It is sweet, but this would all break down when she had to choose between him and her father. And she found that she just couldn't. She and Tony still have a complex relationship, but it's not as romantic of one. Number 6. Jason Todd and Talia al Ghul. Let's squick you out. Now at the time this happened, Jason was not a superhero, but he would be if you count Red Hood like that. And he was Robin before, so haha, take that, it counts. So initially, after Jason was resurrected officially, after the fake out Hush resurrection that would then turn out to be real, complicated yes, Jason would have a backstory of being taken from the streets by Raish, who was training him to use against Batman, but he was a bit more of a brain-dead husk than who he used to be. Then Talia took pity on him and put him in the Lazarus Pit. She was treating him as a mother figure would. She took him under her wing and trained him, but she would then tell him about Tim Drake, the third Robin, to get him all riled up, and also tell him how Batman had at that time taken out her father, and that she needed him to punish him for her. Then she had sex with him. Yeah, that's pretty squicky. You're like a son to me. Punish your father for me. Nope. Out. Number 5. Nightwing and Shawn. So after Rebirth, Nightwing was relaunched, and there was some attempts to give him a new love interest, not Starfire, not Babs, who were doing different things at the time. Someone new. Enter Shawn, who was a real minor villain. The comic even at times calls her an activist. So she would graffiti things, and she was called the Defacer. Is it the Silver Age? Because they want their character names back. In Rebirth, he was supposed to have met her while he was still working with Batman, but despite being essentially a tag artist, she was a match for Dick in every way because of her father. Her big plot with Dick was that she was maybe pregnant. Pregnancy scare. Dun dun dun. This relationship did not end up lasting. Number 4. Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom. This comes to us from Avengers: The Children's Crusade, a miniseries where we see the young Avengers seeking out Wanda because Wiccan, her son, through complicated retcon, has begun to experience his own reality-altering powers. So he wanted to make sure he didn't, unmake the universe. So when he finds out she's at Doom's castle, he goes to rescue her, only to find her in Doom's colors, which in comics is an instant romance cue. You change your color scheme, you might as well go buy a house together. In fact, when Wiccan asks if she's okay, she says, yup, she's marrying Doom tomorrow. So she's great. Baroness Von Doom, here we come. But it turns out that this wasn't a genuine courtship, which is a shame since the two do have a lot in common. Instead, it was Doom who was manipulating her to be with him in a bid to keep her sane, and keep her away from the memories of her past self, the whole no more mutants thing, also House of M. This was to make sure she wouldn't wipe out a whole species again or almost wipe them out. But Wanda remembers, and actually after a bit of finagling goes back to Doom, but not romantically, but for help, because you know he's such a master sorcerer and all, but there seem to be some lingering feelings there. But the ritual they have to do turns Doom back into Hot Doom, which we can never have, that's not the status quo anymore. So he poofs out, so broken up, I guess? I would have been down for more of this though. Number 3. Supergirl and Lex Luthor. Now Supergirl has had some intriguing romances, with Brainiac 5, with her horse, Comet. That was when he was posing as a man. But the Lex plot was a bit disturbing. At first it appeared she was with his son, Alexander Luthor Jr., which would have been okay. But then it turned out that Lex was inside his son's body posing as his own son. But this Supergirl was slightly different, she was known as Matrix, there was other Earth stuff involved, it was pretty convoluted. However, Luthor wasn't even with her because he wanted to be with her, it was because he wanted to develop clones of her, which is pretty standard Lex fare, just look at Connor. Clones everywhere. But that's a relationship ender, so she dumped him back in 1994. Number 2. Wolverine and Mystique. So remember when Wolverine was all no sloppy seconds? Well, he doesn't mean it, because he ended up hooking up with Mystique, even though I guess technically he was the first. It doesn't matter, it's still a gross line. The two actually met back in 1921, and she used him in a bank robbery, but these two would always drift together because of, well, their connection and the fact that they've both been around for longer than other people, and will be around for longer than other people after too. They have also moved in the same circles, kind of on opposite sides. They just kind of fall into each other, sometimes, but it rarely lasts. Too much bad blood and history between them. Mystique has her beliefs and Logan has his angst and his pain, and the twain very rarely meet. But this is one that some fans would like to see more of. Would you? Let me know down below. And number 1, Batman and Nocturna. Let's be real, I have a hard time seeing Batman turn down many of his rogues if they propositioned him. If you wrote it right, you could probably get away with it. He really wants to see them get better, to see the light. So at one point in his history, he had a relationship with Nocturna. This is pre-Crisis Nocturna. This plot, oh man. So Nocturna became one of those people who was entangled with both Bruce Wayne and Batman, but she also got into a custody battle with him for Jason. She was a surrogate mother to him and even adopted him. And you know what she didn't do? Sleep with him. Looking at you, Talia. But she didn't want to take Jason away from Bruce, so she proposed the next best solution in her eyes, an actual proposal. The two would get married and be Jason's parents together. Poor Jason, just being used as a pawn. She was actually in love with Bruce, and they did get married, but obviously it did not last. Number 10. Nightwing and Harley Quinn. So this one is low cause, well, you probably heard about this one thanks to a little movie called Batman and Harley Quinn. In this, Harley and Nightwing hook up, there's no other way to put it. This is after she beats him in a fight and ties him to a bed, and then turns around and notices that things are standing to attention and decides, well, let me just have my way with him. You know, if the scene had been reversed, we would not be talking about this the same way, which is why I defy the double standard. This was creepy for me, uncomfortable, he couldn't say no. I hear you, oh, he was into it. Again, reverse it. Would you be saying the same thing? If yes, congratulations, you're not a hypocrite. I'm so aggressive today. I blame Harley. I'm channeling that Harley energy.
Hey, wait, is it true you used to be Robin? Huh, ain't that a kick in the pants? Little boy ones are all grown up.
Harley isn't exactly the most stable, but this isn't the only time we've seen these two hook up. This also happened briefly in Grayson, where she actually identified him by his kiss. Grayson was an interesting series, so much cheesecake pretending that that level of overt thirst happened in other comics. Man was molested and attacked by vampires. I've read all of Grayson. I was the target audience, I think, and they got me. It's fine, it happens. Number 9. Superman and Poison Ivy. So this is pure coercion, no romance. No romance, or is this a consensual hookup shenanigans here? This occurred during Hush, and Poison Ivy used her pheromones and, well, pheromone kiss to control him. I'm telling you, Superman is susceptible to these things. Now some say he's not more susceptible than others, why are you harping on it? However, when someone is nearly invulnerable, all weaknesses stand out all the more. So here Ivy controlled Superman at the behest of Hush, and for the overall plot. Now some people just remember this cause, well, it's an iconic look. That's a good reveal when she wraps herself around him and is all like, look, gasp, I can't believe this is happening. The art in Hush was just really good, regardless of how you feel about everything else. Number 8. Power Girl and dceu. That's right, you heard it here first, or probably later. This happened in the world's finest comic that was between the Huntress and Power Girl. So this occurred in the New 52 and had to do with Earth 2 shenanigans. So how did this happen? Well, again, this was kind of clandestine. She didn't know she was hooking up with dceu at first, and there's a great cover with a cell phone, and I'm putting it up, you can see it. So he was posing as Mr. Terrific, who had been exiled to Earth 2, and used that as a chance to make his move and actually succeeded in getting Power Girl to be his girlfriend. So he must have something going on in the personality department. I'm just kidding. She was already drawn to Mr. Terrific. He wrote in that pre-existing goodwill and relationship. And well, this was short-lived, and Power Girl was furious when she found out. He was just trying to find his way back to Apocalypse. Just as if people going and coming from Apocalypse doesn't spell doom for us all. Number 7. Possessed Raven and Starfire. So this occurred during the New Teen Titans run in the 80s, and during this arc, Nightwing and Starfire were getting married. It was huge, we've been building up to it. Well, it didn't happen because Raven crashed their wedding hard. And a Raven who is full on in all hail Trigon, I can't wait to rule the universe mode. But here's the thing, it's what happened when she crashed it that was, well, it was a lot. There was some very suggestive things going on, some BDSM things, like with her forcing Starfire onto all fours and yoinking her hair back. Then she kisses her and is all, dear sweet Coriander, of all those I've taken, so far you have pleased me the most. This while straddling her. How did this get past the code? I have so many questions. Is there a non-R-rated way to read this? Because if so, I'll accept my new home in the gutter. No judgment. What do you all think? It's a lot of a lot, right? Number 6. Catwoman and Nightwing. So this one is, well, it just happened. I mean, I'm perplexed by this. Does Catwoman fall more into an anti-hero vein? Sure, most of the time, but making out with your main squeeze's son is pretty icky. There were some hints it was to make Batman jealous too. Who are you, Talia? Well, Bruce has a type, I'll give him that. Nightwing was as perplexed as I was, but he went with it, because that was his characterization at the time. Fun fact, not really actually, but writer Devin Grayson, who would write the arc in which he was raped, would initially blame him for it, only to apologize years later and say she hadn't thought the plot was a big deal. I'm not over it. Anyway, Catwoman and Dick, they made out. Next number. Number 5. Blink and Annihilus. Blink is an interesting character who I have a huge soft spot for because of the Exiles, but she's here because she had a romance with Annihilus, who is a classic Fantastic Four villain. Blink initially comes from the age of Apocalypse, and took up with the amnesiac version of Annihilus. This was in the negative zone, but he called it off when he felt himself beginning to revert back to his original personality, as he really did care for her and didn't want to hurt her. This would be a relationship that would stay with Blink, and when she had the opportunity to attempt to save him, she would take it. However, these days, this is more of a forgotten romance, and for most of us more of a someone was with Annihilus? What? When? Why? Number 4. Ravager and Superboy. This one is a pure fake out. Now, Ravager was a supervillain when she first debuted, unstable, working with her father Deathstroke, but over time she joined the Titans. Deathstroke's kids in the Titans, it's a thing. Well, except for his first kid, you know, getting enhanced by the Hive and dying, which started off Deathstroke's whole I gotta kill the Titans thing. Now, Ravager is more frequently portrayed as a member of the Titans, or coming around to them very quickly. Now, this pairing, her and Superboy, is teased on the very cover of the issue, and just look at Superboy's face, it looks like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to him. But haha, this Ravager was a fake. This wasn't the real Ravager, which I'm fine with. Ravager and Superboy, well, Connor, Superboy, there is more than one now. It's all more confusing than it needed to be thanks to them hyper-aging John Kent, Clark and Lois' son. Take that, Lady of Kleenex mentality. Still, this was a thing. They kissed. It counts. Ha! Number 3. Storm and Dracula. Dracula was super into Storm, wanted her to be his queen vampire. Vampire queen. Why do people in comics always turn this offer down? I'd be all, pick me, I volunteer. Which is why I never get picked. Too keen. You gotta act like you don't want it. Like a cat. Uncanny X-Men number 159. He went full Dracula on her. Seduction. He does turn her into a vampire for a bit, and we get this great annual cover of her living her best vampire life. But well, this didn't last. She managed to shake the vampirism off, and I for one was sad. But we have the whole alternate timeline and What If where she stayed a vampire. This was, I'm biased. I love being an evil powerful queen, and that is Storm to a T when she gets like this. I just love Storm. I'll take any Storm I can get, even 80s punk rock Mohawk Storm, aka the coolest Storm. Dracula used to be cool, now he's kinda whiny and begs for dates. But he married Deadpool's ex-wife, so maybe he's happy now. I don't know, probably not. Eternity is a long time. Number 2. Thor and the Enchantress. This gets to be high up because this could have been a great love. In an AU story, these two were married and had a son. Happily married, no Sue and Reed shenanigans here. Enchantress at this point wishes she was the woman Thor loved. Amora, not enough people say her name. Amora is her name, not the woman that Thor loves. That changes. Right now it's the She-Hulk. Now this developed over time. She was initially sent to take out Jane and worked with Loki to seduce Donald Blake, Thor's human form. But she came to care for him, but well, that's not the best first impression, is it? And Thor has a whole slew of lovely ladies throwing themselves at him, so she has a lot of competition, and Thor's not really one to dabble too much in dealing with the villains. He's not Batman, that's for sure. These two, there's something there. I just want more of a spotlight on Amora.
I wanted thy love, not your death. Please, please come back to me.
And number 1, Dr. Doom and Storm. Oh yes, Dr. Doom is at it again. He's trying to find that Baroness Von Doom. Will no one help him warm his drafty castle and listen to him lament about the death of his mom? Someone stay with Doom. Uncanny X-Men number 145. This issue sees the two of them having a candlelit dinner together, and even though it's part of a Doom plot, he finds himself drawn to her, particularly her confidence and lack of fear around him. The way she acts as though they're just equals, and he's super into it. And she seems to like him. She's like, Doom is a fascinating man. And he's like, she's drawn to me like a lioness to a lion, like a queen to a king. Wow, calm it down. Down, boy. He ultimately goes through with his plan with Arcade, but not before saying he finds her enchanting, but then ruining it by adding child to that. Just why, Doom? Go back to like a lioness to a lion. Number 10, Superboy and Knockout. We're talking about Con-El from the 90s, so not the first Superboy, that was Clark. This is Con-El, he's a clone, and this is the 90s, so he's just a regular clone. He's not Clark and Lex's son yet, which is the greatest retcon of all time. So Con-El appeared during the reign of the Supermen, when there were 4 Supermen in Metropolis to replace Superman post his death, aka plot stall for his wedding. Now one of Con-El's things was that he was a bit of a player, and by that I mean horn dog. He was exactly at boob height, and this was of many people, and oh boy did he love it. So him and Knockout. Knockout is a former female Fury, and when she got to Earth she started a rivalry and flirtation with Superboy just for fun. She thought he was cute. She loved his grungy, pointless belts. These two would eventually form a friendship and share many a kiss, though some were unconscious on his part. Her name was Knockout. But for the most part it was a will they won't they, there's good in her. People forget about this one because Knockout would end up with Scandal Savage, and Superboy would be retconned many a time. But 90s Con is back, with his half sunglasses. He's too cool for school. I don't care, I like this design. Number 9, Harley and Deadshot. Putting this one lower cause this has been adapted a couple of times, like in Batman Assault on Arkham as well as Suicide Squad. And of the two, which are basically the same, if you have the choice, check out Assault on Arkham. It's more cohesive and animated, which is a rich medium that deserves more love, attention, and our support. So Harley and Deadshot were a big item in the New 52, which placed Harley on the Suicide Squad. Deadshot was Harley's first big officially depicted relationship after the Joker. They were still playing coy with Ivy, / remembering that Ivy had a personality and villainous goals of her own. Salt over. This relationship was unstable. Deadshot is actually suicidal. He wants to die, or at least did. They've eased up on that quite a bit. But New 52 Harley was also something. This relationship was hot and heavy, but really fell apart when she took Mr. J's face and put it on Deadshot. The Joker had cut off his face at this point, and then tried to make out with it. The implication was that she liked Deadshot because he was crazy too, but not crazy enough because he was like, no faceplay. Number 8. Daredevil and Typhoid Mary. So Daredevil accidentally created Typhoid Mary, which adds a whole other layer to these proceedings. So let's go. Mary worked at a brothel, and Daredevil had tracked his villain there. However, when he broke in to confront him, instead of the girls who worked there being happy to see him, they attacked him. And in the skirmish, he ended up accidentally pushing Mary out of a window. At that point, because you know in comics a head injury means personality shift or amnesia, she vowed to never let another man hurt her again and became Typhoid Mary. It also triggered her mental illnesses, such as split personalities. So she would begin a romance with Matt Murdock while fighting him as Typhoid Mary, as the Daredevil that is. This was the Daredevil villain hookup pre-Elektra, but then Elektra came and erased all knowledge of anything prior. Was there life before Elektra? Yes, there was. Is my timeline correct? I'm sure you'll let me know. Number 7, Cheetah and Batman. So this one comes to us from the Justice League series, which was part of the dceu, and here we're dealing with the Injustice Society, when they just so happen to capture Batman because, well, the Joker was part of the society, and if the society's not taking down Batman, he's not interested. So they have Batman all chained up in a force field, and different villains are keeping an eye on him. And at one point it's Cheetah, full furry Cheetah, who decides to mac on Batman because, well, a lot of people have the hots for Batman, and when tied up they will take full advantage of this. This was more curiosity than a thing. Batman always lets them kiss him too. It puts them in a vulnerable spot. Joker should just try this, it clearly works. Number 6, Night Owl and the Twilight Lady. We're leaving DC and Marvel kinda. Say it ain't so. We're gonna look at the Watchmen universe, and we're gonna be looking at Night Owl 2, Dan Dreiberg, a fascinating case, a man who loved being a superhero as it made him interesting, as well Dan, he's kinda ordinary, bordering on boring, which is fine, but it's an interesting contrast. Well, one of the dalliances from his heyday is with the villain the Twilight Lady. This is hinted at subtly in the first Watchmen graphic novel series by Alan Moore, where there is some dialogue and also a framed picture of her. There's also that one shot before the world explodes in his dream sequence, and then it was brought to the foreground in the Before Watchmen series, which Moore hated, but that doesn't mean you have to. Their relationship was explored more in depth, with the two hooking up only to have a funny moment when she realizes she actually already knows his civilian identity. And while it's all quite friendly, it's nostalgic, which for me worked because it was set before the big superhero ban in that universe, etc. Number 5. Killer Frost and Firestorm. Now, thanks to the Flash's CW series, many of you may be more aware of this one. This is than you would have been otherwise, but this one is a classic. People can't get enough of the fire and the ice. The first incarnation of the character did appear in Firestorm comics. This was Crystal Frost, who would eventually die after absorbing too much energy from Firestorm, which would lead us to Louise Lincoln. But she would have vendetta against Firestorm, blaming him for Crystal's death. It was with Crystal who he started the flirtation. Killer Frost used to be a big flirt. That would come back a bit with Caitlin Snow in the New 52. People like the opposites, the fact that their very touches cause steam. Look, these are the rationales, I just report them, I don't judge them. That's not what the series is for. This series is for joy. It sparks joy. Number 4. Superboy and Poison Ivy. 90s Superboy back at it again. This is from the World's Finest 3 miniseries, when Connor is all, Poison Ivy, I can handle this, only to be floored when she kisses him. Now people always say these don't count, Ivy kisses everyone. She does, yes, but at times there can be some canon lingering effects of besottedness. There was a manipulation element in there at play. Speaking of, in the Batman animated series comic tie-ins, she would kiss Robin and cause him to fall for her so that he could protect them while they went out on their crime sprees, them being her and Harley. These are more like blips, hookups. Kinda. But sometimes she takes them further when the whim strikes her. Poison Ivy is dangerous and misanthropic, meaning she hates people. Lovey-dovey Ivy just, okay, real talk, it can work, but most of the time writers just do it to make her a foil for Harley, which reduces her down to just a love interest, the very thing they accused Harley of being for the Joker, even though that was never true. Just, can we write Ivy with conflict and personality, please? Remember when she saved all those orphans? Remember when she tried to blow up the world? I do. Anyway, her and Superman making out. He doesn't mind it too much, because that was his character trait. Ladies. Rawr. Number 3. Batwoman and Nocturna. So the Batwoman comic series would introduce a deep love between Batwoman and her partner Maggie Sawyer. It was all gonna culminate in a wedding. It was the writer's whole plan, a big arc. But then it didn't happen because no marriages, like at all. It was a decree. It was a thing at the time. Marriage? Boo. Who would read that? My salt knows no bounds. Give me couples of all types, including married. So we would instead at one point have a vampire plot with Batwoman and Nocturna. This was not romantic. Nocturna would use her vampiric power to hypnotize her and make her kinda think she was with Maggie. She was really out of it. She would then drink from her and other things were heavily implied. In fact, it would go on to be called a rape. I mean, many vampire encounters, when you think about it, kinda end up that way. This would become kinda of a relationship, but an unhealthy one. Some were mad it ever happened, and were like, vampirism doesn't make it okay. But others were like, it's dark and not supposed to be something you love, and if you do, it may not be for the reasons people think. It spawned a whole bunch of we need to talk about this articles, which I love, and here we are, talking about it. It was dark and it happened. Vampires. Blah blah blah. Number 2. Daredevil and Black Cat. This is mostly on here because, well, there are some really awkward panels like this kissing panel followed by him sniffing his fingers. I've been too deep in the gutter to not have a very specific thought process when seeing this panel. May you live on in innocence if you don't know what I'm talking about. Bless your soul. So when Black Cat ended up teaming up with Spider-Man and Daredevil, she found herself drawn to Daredevil. And you know how Felicia is, she's a go for it kind of girl. And actually so is Murdoch. He's not adverse to hooking up with the more dangerous ladies. And fans, well, they liked it. They were like, is this gonna be the new thing? Black Cat skirts the lines of anti-hero and full villain. She falls back and forth as the plot needs her to. My favorite part of Spider-Man seeing these two making out is him saying, I think this is my supervillain origin story. Still, with Black Cat, you always have to deal with the fact that she's more into the mask part of the person than their civilian identity. So when she's with people seeking a balance, it can be a bit of a problem for her. Still, cool pairing, out of left field, but still, made sense. And in at number 1, Iceman and Mystique. That's right, this was a big deal for some people. So Bobby got into his head that Mystique could be redeemed, and hence we would have a bunch of issues of him working with her, trying to save her, and her, well, she seemed to think he was sweet, and he actually tried to understand her. like her past relationship with Rogue and the like. This turned into a bit of a relationship for a bit, with lines like, "You're so cold to the touch, but that doesn't make any difference to the fire that burns here." Here being his heart. Now, some people had beef with the age gap. Mystique is old, like she knew Wolverine back in the day, and so some were like, no, he's a kid. Others worried she was manipulating him, and how earnest he clearly was about her turning over a new leaf. Ultimately, this would all fall apart because she would go back to villainy and this relationship would become a sore spot. And it's now one we're not always allowed to talk about in certain circles. You know, cause time travel, young Jean Grey, and poorly handled retcons with rationales like, he's different because that was his young self and not his old self. Iceman's history freaks some people out now, but not me. All Iceman all the time. Who else remembers this pairing? Number 10, Superman X Maxima. Said X / and. We have to talk about that cover from this Elseworld story where Superman is making out with Maxima. Well, really it's just an alternate reality story. He's making out with her on his wife's grave after Lois had died because woman of Kleenex theory, and she couldn't handle his super baby. This occurred in Armageddon 2001. So what was Armageddon 2001? Well, it was a 1991 crossover series that was not too well received. So in this series, Wave Rider was touching people and it created new timelines. That's the Cliff Notes edition. When he touched Superman, he initiated this last timeline. So in this timeline, Superman married Lois as per usual, but then she died, so Maxima had her chance. In main canon, she was an alien of the Almeratians, and she wanted to mate with him because he was a prime specimen, and as the princess of the planet, that was her mission. It was poorly implemented, but this plot could work, you just have to work real hard. That didn't happen, but instead we have this story, where Maxima gets to be Clark's rebound chick with the promise that she won't die in childbirth, or before. Why is this here on superheroes and supervillains? Well, in main verse, once rejected, Maxima goes full supervillain for a bit, cause what's more appealing than that? Number 9, Harley Quinn and Green Lantern. This oh so brief liaison occurs in the Harley's Little Black book series, a bunch of zany madcap stories featuring Harley doing, well, whatever the author wants her to. In this one, she comes into possession of a red lantern ring, and Hal has to get it back and stop her wild adventures. At the end of all this, Harley demands a kiss, which Hal is more than happy to give cause it's Hal. He doesn't take much convincing. Just point him in the direction of the nearest cave and all his objections will melt like butter. However, then Harley grabs his butt and that's too much for Hal. He flies off. I don't know, I like Hal, but Harley dodged a bullet. I mean, look at the mess that was him and Star Sapphire, his first supervillain hookup. And that one was awkward because at first Carol didn't even know she was Star Sapphire. Number 8, Rick Flag and Harley Quinn. Let's get all our brief moments out of the way first. Rick Flag, founding member, former leader, sometimes still leader of the Suicide Squad, man crush of Deadshot, who has many, but Rick Flag was one of the first, and Batman. Deadshot was obsessed. Anyway, while Rick and Harley were both on the squad, modern slang has ruined that word for me. Squad. Anyway, these two end up sharing a kiss and well more. They just full on hook up. The best part of this though is that it's intercut with Zod freaking out and trying to cut into his own brain using laser vision. So you have two very different moods going on. Steamy hookup on one side of the page, Kryptonian rage on the other. It made me laugh, what can I say? They treat this mostly as just a hookup, but honestly Rick Flag wouldn't be the worst for Harley. Of all of her impulsive, romanticized hookup decisions, so all of them, yes that includes Ivy, this has the potential to be one of the better ones? Am I the only one who is seeing her slip back into her codependent ways with Ivy? Just me? Okay. I'm worried about my baby Quinn. She was sane for a lot of this run, by the way, because of the Psycho Pirate. Number 7, Hulk and Umar. So Umar is Dormammu's sister, and during Defenders number 3, she enchanted Hulk to be her sex slave. So this is not consensual, but it's played like a joke by most people. Rape jokes, time and place people. So these two get it on, but apparently the Hulk is disappointing, and Umar proceeds to lecture him about his lack of prowess. Even though this sex was so intense it bent reality, even though it only lasted for 6 minutes. Sex was something that used to be danced around in comics a bit, what with the code being in effect and all that. But when people started to ignore it, well, let's just say some people don't know how to write this stuff in a non-juvenile manner, which is why you get so many of these jokes. People like to say that it's fanficky, but as a near lifelong ficker and shipper, I can tell you that those people hone their craft a lot more than this. They've had practice, people. You watch how they would write these scenes and hold on to your hats. We couldn't even show any of it. But instead, we have 6 minutes jokes. So this was a thing that happened, and it happened again when Hulk was in World Breaker mode, and this time he lasted 3 hours, so Umar was pleased. Let's just leave these two alone. Also, as always, humor is really subjective. So if this is the height of comedy for you, you do you. Defenders number 3 and Incredible Hulk's 633. You're welcome. Number 6, Barry Allen and the Reverse Flash. So there have been many Reverse Flashes. Vaughn, Solomon, Daniel West, but today we're looking at someone who was thought to be the new Reverse Flash for a bit in the Rebirth arc. She was Barry's girlfriend because Ira's who? Love is dead. She would turn out to be the negative Flash, laying claim to the negative Speed Force. Now she was not the Reverse Flash, but listen, if you weren't there you have no idea how hard these articles baited that she was the Reverse Flash. It was all Barry Allen the Reverse Flash, la gasp. I would have read that though, and with any of them to be honest, I'm just thirsty and open to possibilities. I put this here to ask you a question. Do you read articles like this as comics are coming out? And do you wish the things in them were accurate? Like I did for this one, a lot. Flashes have that problem with people in their lives. Remember when Zoom was Wally's ally and friend only to figure out that he was the Reverse Flash and then cause his wife Linda to miscarry their twins? I remember. Never forget. Number 5, Ravager and Tim Drake. It's always Tim on these lists. So Rose Wilson is one of those characters who is slotted onto whatever Teen Titans team you need her on depending upon the timeline you're in, which is how she can be a contemporary of both Dick and Tim and be the same age as both of them. Seriously, age in comics is such a sliding scale. You go to bed 28 and wake up 22. Anyway, Rose tried to jump Tim, though potentially after drinking, so questionable. Tim, like with many women in his life, is like, what are you doing? And he has to handcuff her to get her off. Then Kid Devil walks in. So this is on here because Ravager was a villain at the start, but it's admittedly a fast turnaround. Number 4, Poison Ivy and Harvey Dent. So this occurred in Batman the Animated Series, and in it, Pamela Isley, who we all know as Poison Ivy, was dating Harvey Dent in an elaborate revenge plot for some land he had developed, which had rendered a rare species of rose nearly extinct. She went so far as getting engaged to him. She was very committed. Hun. She also tried to take out Bruce Wayne, but well, Batman figures it out. So she ends up being revealed as Poison Ivy and ends up in the very prison that was developed on the land that set her off in the first place. Harvey Dent would later go on to become Two-Face and have a contentious relationship with Ivy going forward. Deserved. Number 3, Iceman and Daken. And I'm ready for everybody to yell about how you say his name, even though at a con they said it was Daken. So Iceman and Daken have one of those flirtatious, oh we're fighting and I could break every bone in your body kind of things going on. And by that I mean freeze. Freeze every bone in your body. They even have one of those dance scenes where he starts to dance with him and then he freezes him as they dance. And they fully did hook up later on when Iceman had a beard. Just the ice beard is funny to me. What's going on with Daken's affiliation? Well, no one's ever sure, but he's villainous more often than not. Iceman is currently having a thing with Pyro now because fire and ice, no writer can resist. Also now means at the time of this recording. Check the date. Number 2, Roy Harper and Cheshire. So this is a classic villain hero hookup from Roy's dark period after the drug addiction and his falling out with Ollie as a result. And he ended up with Jade, and these two would actually have a daughter, Leanne Harper, whom Jade would leave with Roy as she felt that she would have a better life with him than with her. It was a bond that kept them at least cordial, and it was torn apart by cry for justice, mostly as a shock value death. Leanne died in that arc. This was so Roy could relapse on drugs and have sad our daughter is dead sex with Cheshire. Fun times. Some people know about this one, but we'll see if they bring it back to the foreground. Maybe they already have. Ooh. And number 1, Batman and the Joker. Yes, this one. We're finally going here, but it's not the obvious love that Joker has for Batman, twisted as it is. No, we're going to the alternate universe created by Flashpoint after Barry Allen goes back in time to try to save his mom and jacks up the timeline because, well, he succeeds. Now in this timeline, Bruce was the one who died in Crime Alley, and his parents had 2 very different reactions. His father became Batman and his mother became the Joker, but there's still a love there. So much so that when Thomas goes to tell Martha that their son is alive in another universe, she's thrilled. But when she learns that their son is Batman, it's too much, and she flees, plunging to her death. Depressing.
Number 10, Loki and Clint Barton. Okay, so admittedly would only be reduced to one moment in the comics, but it's still such a weird one that I had to bring it up for you. Basically, Loki got his hands on Wanda Maximoff's astral form and was looking to cause some mayhem and mischief. What Loki as Scarlet Witch most wanted was to mess with Norman Osborn, but the mighty Avengers that she had assembled became suspicious of her. Stinger, aka Cassandra Lang in particular. Eventually this came to blows. Clint Barton appeared under the Ronin guise and managed to subdue Loki as the Scarlet Witch long enough for him to kiss her. What? Why? Because Clint argued that magic was complex, but I guess kisses reveal everything? Including if you're really Loki disguised as the Scarlet Witch. Even stranger, this didn't really immediately seem to allow Clint to know that Wanda was actually Loki in disguise. It just let him confirm what everyone else already suspected, which was that it wasn't really Wanda. So maybe he just really wanted to kiss fake Wanda. I don't know. Number 9. Batman and Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy has been working to get Bruce Wayne since the 60s. The thing about this relationship though is it's fairly one-sided. While Poison Ivy has more recently been seen as a sometimes ally to Batman, teaming up with him in order to help the city of Gotham, she was formerly only concerned with her plants and having them conquer and wipe out humanity, which she saw as a disease. She still strives to protect nature, but has calmed down somewhat in the comics as her eco-terrorism is almost now flaunted as a pro for her being fairly good, as opposed to an extreme con. The comic series Batman The Long Halloween even saw Pamela fighting Catwoman over the bat, whom she had managed to gain control over. Plants everywhere. Number 8. Wasp and Magneto. This relationship was similar to the one Storm and Doctor Doom shared, that old kidnap and romance trick that so many villains have tried. During the original Secret Wars series, Magneto captures Janet Van Dyne, claiming he only wants to talk to her, although it seems more likely that by talk, Magnus really means seduce. He works towards wearing her down by paying her compliments. Despite the fact that she originally seems uninterested in his advances, she ends up being unable to resist the icy blue gaze of Magneto's eyes. The two share a long and intense kiss. In the next issue, she reveals she's only been pretending to be falling for him in order to find out what he was planning. Pretty intense, considering it's kind of implied that they may have slept together. Why else do you ask someone to make a comb for you? If you gotta fix that hair, something happened. Number 7. Mystique and Professor X. This one is pretty crazy and still pretty mysterious in regards to how it all happened. What we've been led to believe so far is that Charles and Mystique most likely had a wedding in secret. They were potentially married to one another while they were also maybe married to other partners? We don't really know. During their romance, wed or not, Mystique conceived a child by Xavier. She gave birth to a baby boy under the guise of Moira McTaggart after the death of Charles by Phoenix Force possessed Cyclops, and ended up giving the baby away. He would grow up to become Charles Xavier too and look just like his father, causing some confusion for future X-Men. Number 6. Magneto and Rogue. These two had a brief relationship in Age of Apocalypse, but the start of their will they won't they style relationship can be traced back to Uncanny X-Men during their stay on Savage Land. Rogue implores Magneto to just try to get along with the rest of the X-Men, but he refuses and departs, leaving Rogue in tears and Magneto with an inner monologue expressing how he wishes he could have stayed with her, but how they're simply not meant to be. Which is also fair, considering the age difference between these two has got to be huge. Still, despite this, they later have a brief romance. Pretty weird. Age means nothing when you're a superhuman, I guess. Number 5. Diamondback and Captain America. Diamondback was originally a criminal who was part of the Serpent Society. Despite her criminal roots, she fell in love with Captain America after the first time she fought up against him. She made an effort to team up with Steve Rogers. The two even dated while she was still with the Serpent Society. Although she later ended up defecting and joining S.H.I.E.L.D. when the pair started their romance, Rachel Layton aka Diamondback was known as a criminal. She often goes back to crime. Number 4. Rogue and Shadow King. Rogue and the Shadow King have had a very interesting relationship in the comics, one wherein he aims to make her his Shadow Queen. The why behind this has to do with all the people that Rogue has touched and absorbed. Through her, the Shadow King would gain access to all of them, which makes her appealing to him and makes him want to woo her. Still, this relationship is super creepy, especially how into it Rogue looks in every panel involving the pair of them. What is happening there, Rogue? She looks so intense too, she's like, I'm super into this. Number 3. Loki and Storm. Loki found himself pining after Storm at one point in the comics when he was looking to replace Thor in Asgard. Using his magic, he turned her against her fellow friends and X-Men and made her believe that she had lost her powers. He then made her own version of Mjolnir and gifted her power with it. Beyond just attempting to trick Storm, Loki seemed to genuinely pine after her, complimenting her strength and beauty, and even pondering that she would make a great queen for him in Asgard. Fortunately, Loki did not get the opportunity to continue manipulating her into a relationship with him. The X-Men fought to remind Storm of who she and they truly were. After she got confused and attacked Wolverine, and Hela came forth to claim his soul and finish what Storm had started, Storm turned against Loki, and the X-Men won the day. No one messes with Storm. Number 2. Jezebel Jet and Batman. Jezebel Jet was a wealthy socialite and the ruler of an African nation in DC Comics, referred to as Mutamba. Sorry if I said that wrong. Bruce met her at a fundraiser in an art gallery in London, and after talking with her, attempted to get her phone number. Initially, Jet spurned his advances, citing Wayne's reputation and not wanting to become just another notch on his bedpost. Fair enough. The two ran into one another at a ski resort, and after spending some time there, began dating. The relationship started shortly after Damien had been dropped on Bruce's doorstep, which caused Talia to keep a close eye on them. Jezebel and Bruce almost broke up due to his consistent, mysterious, and unexplained disappearances and going-ons in his life, until an attack on both of them caused Jet to realize that Bruce Wayne was actually Batman. The two then became very close, with Batman even giving her a tour of the Batcave, and there was talk that they might even get married. But it was not meant to be, as it was later revealed that the relationship had been a trap, as Jezebel had been working as a mole for the evil organization the Black Glove, and Bruce claimed he had been playing Jet as well, and had known her secrets all along, revealing facts about her past as evidence. Then why did they have a relationship? They're both playing each other, I don't understand. After escaping Batman, Talia would attack Jet's plane and later revealed that she had killed Jezebel, presenting Batman with his former lover's severed head. That's a good way to win a man, Talia. That's a good way. Number 1. Joker and Batman. Wait, what? But when does that... So are they in the Flashpoint timeline, of course. In this timeline, it is their young son Bruce Wayne who is murdered and not Martha and Thomas. The married couple do their best to move forward, but Martha is so traumatized by the event that even after months of therapy she seems stuck in her grief and non-responding. Thomas takes up the mantle of Batman, tracking down his son's murderer. Before he leaves to get his vengeance, Thomas tells Martha that it is time for them to move on and that he misses her smile. Upon his return, he finds Martha has cut into the corners of her mouth to give herself a permanent Glasgow smile. He has her committed, but she escapes and becomes the Joker, driven mad by her son's death. She blames Thomas and the two eventually cross paths and come to blows. Thomas shares with her what he has learned of the main timeline and how he can set things right and make sure Bruce lives and that they die instead. Martha agrees that this is the best decision and the two share a kiss. Martha later kills herself after finding out that if Bruce lives, he will grow up to become Batman, which obviously would make her kind of like his alternate nemesis. Yeesh. Drama, intrigue, Flashpoint.